that in. Right, okay. My name's Dr. Gareth Bryant. I'm the Deputy CEO of Wessex Local Medical Committees and a GP in Wiltshire. This is my colleague and friend, Dr. Andrew Morrice, who I've known for many years. Morrice, thanks for coming.
Hi Gareth, thanks. No, it's a pleasure.
We've got a lot to talk about today. We're running this new programme for the LMC, which I'm quite excited about. I think it's going to be really interesting couple of days. People are already booking onto it, so it's quite
good news.
A radical thing. But I was really intrigued when we had our conversation when we met a few months ago about the concept of a lost update. Why do we need a lost update?
Yes, I suppose we've got a lot of update courses available to us, haven't we, as GPs and primary care clinicians, and they are actually, if you look at the content of those, they're very much structured around the traditional way that we tend to get our CPD, which is from specialists. But I was aware from my medical school teaching and from my more general interest that there was an awful lot of scientific information and also just useful practical clinical ideas, which there wasn't really anyone in that sort of traditional suite of providers that was going to, they wouldn't have any particular reason to share that information with us. And that's partly because it's not where their focus of attention is, and it's partly because actually as GPs we're still sometimes not quite in the situation where we're being treated as a specialty in our own right.
Absolutely.
So my feeling was that actually some of this scientific information and the ideas that I was engaging with actually were really useful, and in many ways some of it is specific update. It's like things that for many of us, if we went to medical school more than about 5-10 years ago, a lot of this is going to be new. Stuff to do with how our mental activities and our emotions and our basic physical processes are all interacting all the time. We weren't taught that at medical school. The science about things like the microbiome is literally, it's like the Wallace and Gromit train thing. You know, the track is being laid very fast. It's a rapidly emerging science. It's very relevant to general practice, and we need to know about what's coming. And more generally, I think medicine operates out of a set of ideas which are almost 19th century ideas. Basic assumptions about who we are, how we function, how to approach the problem of people who are sick and ill. And there's a lot of really useful stuff out there, and the idea was, rather than, lots of us know little bits and pieces of this already. We'll have read the odd book, or we'll have read some articles in the papers, or this, that and the other. The idea was to try and bring it together in a coherent package.
One of the things I see with the doctors that I talk to is the pressure of day-to-day work. They've kind of lost their sense of inquiry.
Yes, because you don't have time to follow up on all the leads that you could follow up on. If you think of actually the sheer number of, you almost have to keep your sanity to screen most of it out. You have to pick the most urgent things to go and check out. So it's giving people a bit of time to step back, look at their work, and what I'm designing this course to do is to try and fill in some of those background questions. I think that we probably all have. How do all these different things relate together?
And things that we've maybe thought about but not had the time to really explore.
Absolutely.
Okay, you talk about in some of the stuff that you've sent to me about a mind-body connection.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Well, I was in Holland teaching just last week, and this woman said right at the end, she'd been listening to me all day, she said, what is this mind-body connection? Okay. Clearly I did. And actually it was quite good, but the way I put it like this is how do you connect two things that aren't separate? How do you connect two things that aren't separate? By remembering they're integrated or conjoined or connected. So the mind-body connection is actually, in a sense, a piece of understanding or remembering that we need to put back in. In terms of physiology, it's probably all to do with the limbic system in the brain and the basic processes around the autonomic nervous system and the immune system and all of that. That's some of the stuff we explore in the update. So, really, it's remembering that these areas that traditionally we've separated, this is just a kind of, it's just a way of making the world simpler.
I've often thought that in our training we get taught in blocks of information,
Absolutely.
blocks of
yeah.
facts, blocks of time,
Yeah.
and actually it's what's left to us to make these connections between these various things that we're taught in individual units.
Yes, exactly. We're taught, as if the cardiovascular system was completely separate to the respiratory system. It was completely separate to the immune system. And actually, these are necessary processes of simplification.
Yeah.
So that we can grasp some of the concepts and get to grips with it, we need to separate things out. But I think what we've not been so good at in our the form of medicine that's sort of the dominant form now in the world, is that we're not very good at taking those bits of simplification or analysis or narrowing down and then putting them back into context.
Yeah.
And what we don't have is really very explicit tools for just a simple working method that we can use in the surgery, in our day-to-day lives, to bring the data back together.
And I think this is one of the things that frustrates general practitioners at the moment, is that as the specialists become super specialists, we are losing that sense of a human being in the middle of all of this.
Yes.
And it becomes a series of non-related pathologies, non-related diseases, which are treated very separately.
Very separately, and with huge amounts of energy and effort expended on each apparently separate problem. Yeah. And there are separate aspects to it. If we think of our classic complex patient that may have 4 or 5 major chronic diagnoses, there are specifics to do with each of those aspects of their health that we label as this condition, that condition, diabetes, depression, rheumatoid arthritis, whatever it is. But actually there's a huge piece in the middle, which is really what we're exploring in the course, which is having a massive impact on all of those processes. But it remains relatively hidden, because the whole of the way that the healthcare is structured and what we're having to respond to as GPs, managing all these specialist departments and particular clinics and particular strands of investigation, what can very easily get lost in the middle is we talk quite a lot about the patient journey and looking after the patient and all of that, but there's something even underneath that. There's some basic science in there about what's at the core of all these conditions. And because so much of the process is structured around our relationship to specialism rather than our relationship to our own speciality, which is to be generalists, this can get lost very easily. It requires a huge effort at the moment. And again, the idea of this is to share some practical tools for keeping our focus in another place that it needs to be. We need to do all that stuff, but we also need to be able to focus on what's at the centre of all that.
I think that's quite profound, because one of the things that Nigel is talking about in the partnership review is about the GMC recognising GPs as specialists, rather than just being on the ordinary register. And I've always thought that as just being a bit of political posturing. But actually, the more I think about it and the more we've had our discussions, the more I've realised actually that's really important and fundamental, that we move away from too much specialist medicine and recognise actually that someone having a generalist approach to the individual is a specialism in its own right.
Exactly. There is a kind of almost, it's a bit like Tudor, what was his name?
Tudor Hart.
Tudor Hart's inverse care law. There's a sort of inverse status law in medicine where the more specific and the less applicable the field of knowledge,
people you help,
the fewer people you help, the more status you get. So you can end up being a specialist in one receptor on a particular synapse, and you're kind of like the king, the guru. And actually, where a lot, and we know this, where a lot of health and illness is, we intuit. Most of us as GPs intuit. We know, we understand actually that what's driving a lot of people's problems are actually quite simple things. But what's intriguing about those simple things is there's some wonderfully complex science. We can promote this back in our own imaginations, if you like, because this is proper science now. This isn't vague sort of sound bites or woolly phrases. There's some real nuts and bolts to understand. And that we as generalists have probably got the most to gain from engaging with those strands of knowledge.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. In the course plan that we've talked about, there are lots of things about why we're failing to engage our patients.
Yes.
Around some of the things that we say to them, around exercise, around smoking, around food.
Yes.
Can we talk about that?
Well, those are big topics, which is of course why the course takes. We could just about fit this content into 2 days.
Yeah.
So it's a topic. Exercise is a nice, probably the simplest one of those to talk about. Exercise is actually, when you look at us from an evolutionary perspective, a really bizarre concept. What it really consists of, to jump ahead to a conclusion on the course, is a trick that we have to play on ourselves to remind us that we have to use all our resources to move around. We've got all these resources for movement and making physical effort, which originally were there just to meet our needs, so we could get shelter, so we could stay safe, so we could find enough to eat. And because what we've been brilliant at doing as a species is inventing all these wonderful ways of saving effort. And so now we have to have an artificial concept. But somewhere deep down in the core of our patient is a profound animal instinct to save energy.
Well, when you think about the progression of time and evolution, this change in our physiology and this change in our way of being is so short.
It's incredibly
on
short.
an evolutionary perspective, we have had no time to adjust.
Absolutely no time to adjust. Arguably, even I mean, some people say we haven't really even adjusted to farming. I mean, I think that's probably taking it a bit far. So we're all living like the wealthy of the past, and like the wealthy of the past, we suffer from all their problems. Strokes, heart attacks, cancer, obesity, and all the rest of it. So on. But actually, our bodies are adapted for are quite different, and our minds are actually adapted for quite a different scenario. And we're quite good at being malleable. Human beings are very malleable if you look at all the different ways people have lived over the course of history and through the world. It's quite amazing the different sort of lifestyles and cultures there are. But at core, there is quite. It's really getting back to what's the core. What kind of animal are we? If we were vets, what kind of animal are we looking after? If we understand that animal properly, then we'll know how to look after it.
Absolutely.
And because we human beings we approach all of this through a layer of mental furniture, some of which is helpful, some of it isn't. So a lot of what the course is about is sifting through some of these ideas we use. And actually checking them out. How useful is that idea? How accurate is that idea?
One of the things I'm hoping at the end of the process, at the end of the 2 days, that we'll have a cohort of people who've come together, who've explored new ideas, who've revisited some of their basic scientific understandings, having been trained as scientists.
Absolutely.
And come away with a new perspective. That's my real hope.
I think it would be exceptionally unlikely if that didn't happen. Let's put it that way. Somebody just last week sent, as the day went on, more and more pieces of the puzzle fell into place. That was
and the opportunity to have rich and deep conversations with colleagues, with other professionals, other people who have a shared and maybe different perspective. Is such a gift.
Yes, absolutely.
We don't have time to do that anymore.
Yes.
And actually, this is an opportunity for 2 days to step away.
Absolutely.
And engage in the world in a slightly different way.
But we'll have plenty of time for talking. Because actually, when we go to meetings, the reason why we prefer to go to a meeting rather than do online learning, which is lovely and convenient, but the reason we go to a meeting is so we can meet each other, and it's actually we get a lot from that. Because we're in our little team. And it's really nice to meet new people who are doing things differently. That's really why we all keep going to evening meetings, isn't it?
Great.
But often there's not much time for that.
No.
So we're trying to make plenty of time by giving it 2 days, plenty of breaks, plenty of time to discuss the material. Yeah.
On the actual course, we've suggested that people stay for the meal, which I think would be really important, because to do something communal and eat together, something that fulfills our basic physiological needs together, is going to be a powerful thing. And I think it's really important that we do that. And also, we've given people the opportunity to stay overnight, so people don't have to drive.
If you don't need to,
if you don't need to do that, please don't do that. Come and take 48 hours out of your normal life and do something different.
It's really nice to give yourself the time and the space to actually let all of that sink in.
Yeah.
So that we're not rushing from one thing to the other. Yeah. And obviously we have also designed it so that if people need to get home for childcare reasons or whatever it is, that's also easy to do. Yeah.
Great. Well, the course is at the end of January.
Yeah.
So a few months away. We're doing the work to prepare for it.
Yes.
So if anybody's watching this or listening to this and wants to come on, please do. It's
come.
A really interesting 2 days.
It'll be lovely to meet you, and good to hear all of what people will bring, their questions and everything. That's what brings it to life. Is the people who come.
An open heart and an open mind.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Morrice.
No worries.